Today we will learn and reflect on the history of the Greco-Persian Wars, summarizing our prior long-form videos. We will ponder many questions. How were the small Greek city-states led by Sparta and Athens able to defeat the massive, mighty Persian Empire? What led the Persians to challenge the Greeks on their home turf? What was the history of the Persian Empire? Was the Greek historian of these wars Herodotus the father of history, or was he the father of lies? How did Herodotus reflect the warrior culture of the Iliad? How did the Greco-Persian Wars lead the Greeks into their brutal Peloponnesian Wars between the Athenian Empire and their Spartan allies? At the end of our talk, we'll discuss the sources used for this video. Please feel free to follow along in our PowerPoint script posted to SlideShare. Please, we welcome interesting questions in the comments. Let us learn and reflect together. What can we learn by reflecting on the Greco-Persian Wars? We can learn more about Greece, we can learn more about Persia, and how these two fighting cousins influenced each other. If you look on the map, Greece is on the west coast of the Aegean Sea, and Persia is on the east coast. The Greeks were a seafaring people, and often Greek citizens seeking opportunity would establish new colonies on the Mediterranean shores. Many Greek colonies were formed on the west coast of the Aegean Sea, which was called Ionia. There was always tension between Persia and the leading Greek city-states, led by Sparta and Athens, on whether these Greek colonies would be incorporated into the Persian Empire, or whether they would be free, independent Greek city-states. And if you look on the ancient map, the Greeks, like all people, view themselves as the center of the world. And this map shows the ancient world as the land surrounding the Mediterranean Sea and Black Sea, and they had no concept that there was a wider world beyond. Also, just as the United States was defined by its wars, the Revolutionary and Civil Wars and the two world wars in the modern era, the culture of ancient Greece was also defined by its wars, beginning with the myths of the Trojan Wars as sung in the Iliad and the Odyssey. Homer in the Iliad sung of the warrior culture of the Greeks, where when a hostile city-state would be defeated in battle, the military-aged men would be massacred and the women and children would be enslaved. There were no conscientious objectors in the ancient world. Every able male served in the military. The Greco-Persian Wars were the first wars where the Greeks fought against a formidable foreign power. The Greek victory in these wars set up the world wars of the ancient world, the multi-generational Peloponnesian Wars between Athens and Sparta, where Sparta, against all odds, and with Persian assistance, was the eventual victor. And the wars between the Greek city-states and the Persian influence in these wars continued after a short peace, and lasted another generation, exhausting the Greek city-states, leading to their subjection by King Philip of Macedon and his son Alexander the Great. The lesson that Alexander learned from all of these wars, starting with the Greco-Persian Wars, and from Xenophon's leading the Greek mercenary armies from the heart of the Persian Empire, or Babylon, back to Greek territory, was that the Greek hoplite armies were vastly superior to the Persian fighting forces. This meant for Alexander the Great that the Persian Empire was ripe for the taking. And the ancient Greek historian Herodotus offered his listeners, and I say listeners because most Greeks heard his histories read out loud at Greek festivals, entertaining stories on the history of Persia, plus stories about Egypt and the other countries on the borders of Persia. Stories that entertained their listeners as much as they educated them. Herodotus and later Xenophon tells us the origin story of Cyrus the Great, the founder of the Persian Empire, a warlike historical figure many Greeks admired. Herodotus describes how Cyrus the Great defeated King Croesus of Lydia and many other opponents. Both Herodotus and later Xenophon describe how Cyrus defeated the Assyrian Empire by diverting the course of the Euphrates River so he could conquer Babylon, so his army could march in through a gap in the city walls on the dry riverbed. Lydia, ruled by Croesus, was located on the west coast of Asia Minor and likely included Greek city-states on the coast. Croesus was fabulously wealthy. He was one of the first monarchs to issue coinage in the ancient world. Even today, we talk of those who are as rich as Croesus. Herodotus has an entertaining account of Croesus' encounter with the Athenian lawmaker Solon, which was unlikely historically since they lived at different times. Herodotus also has a delightful tale of the Amazons, the women warriors of Scythia, how the Persians doubted they could defeat them in battle, so the Persian partners partnered with them in love. Because who doesn't like stories about the Amazons and their princess, Wonder Woman? Now, modern historians debate whether Herodotus was the father of history or the father of lies, since so many of his stories sound so fantastic. For example, in his Egyptian travel log, although his description of a crocodile suggests that he actually did see a crocodile, he totally botches his description of a hippopotamus. The Greek word for hippo is a river horse, so Herodotus describes a hippopotamus as a horse adapted for life in the river. While Herodotus is the major source for the history of the Greco-Persian Wars, Plutarch, a later ancient Roman historian, contributed biographies of the leading figures of Herodotus' history, including Themistocles, the Athenian leader, and Solon, plus the biography of the legendary Spartan lawgiver Lycurgus, which is also an origin story and a description of the Spartan warrior culture. Also, Aeschylus provides what may have been influenced by eyewitness accounts of the naval battle of Salamis from the perspective of the Persian soldiers. The Persian king Darius was humiliated when an Athenian raiding party fighting in support of the Greek colonies of Ionia attacked and burned the regional Persian capital of Sardis. In response, several years later, King Darius attacked Athens with a small raiding party, seeking to sack Athens and add mainland Greece to the Persian Empire. The Spartans refused to assist the Athenians. They said they first had to celebrate a religious festival, so the Athenian hoplite infantry, assisted only by hoplites from the small Greek city-state of Plataea, attacked on the run the Persian forces as they disembarked from their ships at the Battle of Marathon. The Persian infantry were totally intimidated by the Athenian hoplites. The Greeks not only won the battle, they destroyed several of the Persian ships. But the remaining Persian fleet sailed around to beach near Athens to sack the city. Now the Greek hoplites, after fighting all day, ran 25 miles to meet the Persian ships on the beach outside Athens. Surprised by their speed and fighting spirit, the Persians decided to sail back to Persia. But the Persians returned, and in greater numbers. Many modern historians point out that one reason for the Persians' inability to defeat Greece was that the battles were at the very end of the Persian supply lines, so that logistically it was a long reach for Persian forces to subdue the Greeks. When King Xerxes ascended to the throne, he decided to attack mainland Greece with a much larger force. This Persian army was much too numerous for the Persian ships, so the army marched along the coast while the Persian navy followed them offshore. Many historians see Herodotus as the father of tall tales rather than as the father of lies, since some of his seemingly fantastic tales have been proven true. One fantastic story was that King Xerxes ordered that a canal be dug across the isthmus near Mount Athos. His father, King Darius, had lost many ships in storms when rounding this peninsula. The canal would avoid these storms. Historians were surprised when archaeologists actually found the remains of this canal that had been filled in over the centuries. King Xerxes was the first Persian palace king. The early kings had led the troops in battle. Now, instead of leading his troops, King Xerxes merely observed the battles from his elevated dais, or chair. Many historians speculate this hurt the Persians, as individual Persians sought mainly to impress the watching king rather than follow sound tactics on the battlefield. Stung by their absence at the victorious Battle of Marathon, the Spartans assumed a leading role in this phase of the wars. The Spartans planned to halt the Persian advance at the narrow pass of Thermopylae, and they killed many Persian soldiers over several days. They would not let them pass. But a traitorous Greek revealed a mountainous trail around the narrow pass. Discovering this treachery, the Spartans dismissed their allied forces, and 300 Spartans fought the Persians to their deaths. But this was countered by a great Greek naval victory at the Battle of Salamis. Greek morale sank after the Persian army streamed through the pass of Thermopylae, heading for the city of Athens. The Athenians evacuated their women, children, and elderly from Athens to the surrounding islands. Seeing that the city was vacated, the Persians sacked and burned both Athens and its temples on the Acropolis. The combined Greek fleet was gathered in the Straits of Salamis, south of Athens. The wily Greek leader, Themistocles, grasped that the best chance for the Greeks to prevail would be to fight in the cramped straits of Salamis. He was worried that the Spartan and other triremes would flee. So he sent a duplicitous message to the Persian commander telling him that he was on his side, that the Persians that night needed to bottle up the Greek fleet in the Straits of Salamis. And this was also brilliant tactically, for the Greek naval forces had the benefit of a sound night's sleep and breakfast, while the Persians spent the night before their big battle bobbing on the waves, bottling up the Greeks, and not getting a wink of sleep, nor breakfast. Can you imagine pulling an all-nighter, then having to row and fight all day with little to eat and drink under the bright hot sun? And this is what happens when a hubristic potentate decides on how battles will be fought. The Athenians and their allies were excellent sailors. They skillfully rammed and sank many Persian ships in the cramped straits. It was a resounding Greek victory. Aeschylus has an exciting account of this battle, which was likely based on eyewitness testimony, and the next spring the Persian army was defeated at the Battle of Plataea. Demoralized, King Xerxes and the Persian fleet sailed back to Persia, taking as many Persian troops as possible, while the brave Persian troops remained in Greece. Ironically, the Persian army wintered with a Persian ally, Macedonia, ruled by King Alexander, and he's the namesake for Alexander the Great, who would conquer Persia many generations later. The next spring, the Greek and Persian armies maneuvered in the Boeotian plain in central Greece. Neither army wished to engage with the other. At one time, a Spartan unit disobeyed orders and was isolated by the Persians. During the disorganized melee, the Greeks were able to gain the advantage and chase the Persians behind the palisades in their camp. In the ensuing battle, the majority of the Persians were slaughtered. So how did the Greco-Persian Wars lead to the Peloponnesian Wars? After this defeat, the Athenian and Spartan navies pursued the Persians, whose naval fleets had been weakened, and liberated many of the Ionian colonies. The Spartans initially led this effort, but the hubris of the Spartans led the colonies to ask Athens to head the Delian League to protect them from the Persian Empire. Over time, the Delian League evolved into the Athenian Empire, which would enter into armed conflict with the Spartans. And the 50-year period between the wars, the ancient Greek Thucydides called the Pentecontentia, while Dr. Wikipedia includes this 50-year period as part of the Greco-Persian Wars. Now we'll discuss the sources used for this video. The histories by the ancient Greek historian Herodotus and the Greek lives by Plutarch are both enjoyable to read. You have to be more patient when reading the play The Persians by Aeschylus. There are many variations among the various translations of any of the Greek plays. And both Xenophon in the Cyropedia and Herodotus include a biography of Cyrus the Great of Persia. We especially profited by listening to the Great Courses lectures on Herodotus by Elizabeth Van Diver. The Greek Courses on the Greco-Persian Wars by Professor Hale also provided interesting archaeological evidence used by modern historians. And we also discussed Herodotus and the other Greek historians in our book reviews on Greek history and philosophy. The YouTube description includes a link to our PowerPoint script that we uploaded to SlideShare and also our blog. Please support this channel by sharing this video with your friends and by clicking on the like and subscribe buttons and by clicking on the Amazon links to purchase any of the books we discussed, which will earn us a very small affiliate commission. And please consider becoming a patron of our channel. Plus, we will host special discussion groups for our patrons. Plus, you can click on the Meetup or small M icon to participate in our online discussions, where we practice our future YouTube scripts. And please click on the links for other videos that will broaden your knowledge and improve your soul.